Hello all, this is Mike Thomas of the Holistic Fitness Lifestyle, and I'd like to bring up a topic that has been intriguing me for a lot of years. And so I've been creating structures around this idea to see how I can better understand it. And that topic is holistic thinking. Holistic thinking is the capacity to see how systems interact and to simultaneously look at the elements of a system. Now, there are a lot of different ways we could look at holistic thinking, but what I'd like to propose here is an idea of a developmental structure that we generally fall into in our brain development, starting with when we're conceived through gestation of pregnancy, and then we're born, and about 3 years in, we complete the development of our hippocampus, or at least most of it. And this allows us to remember consciously. Before that, it's all in the ether of unconsciousness. And so this first layer could be considered our physical or our biological layer as far as our neurology. The structure is complete, but the way that it's developed is through relationship. Attachment science has shown over and over again, over a period of 30 years of multi-generational studies, that the way we're interacted with our parental caregivers, usually the mother and potentially the father as well, and perhaps other parental caregivers like grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends, whatever. But generally there's a specific caregiver or two that allow our brains to develop in a particular way. And this foundational layer I call layer 1. Our attachment, our neurobiology, our physicality. And then up through age 7, we have our imprinting phase, where basically our beliefs, our values, our ways of thinking are funneled into a specific way of viewing the world. And this fundamental layer is, you could call it the psychological layer. And then beyond that, beyond age 7, in adolescence, after age 7, and before teenagehood, we could call this layer 3, or our intellectual capacity to put this together in words. It's the period of time where we're learning the most about how to apply everything that our neurobiology in layer 1 and our psychology in layer 2 allows us to understand the world, understand one another and relationships. So layer 3 is a fundamental layer, but it's the first one where we're able to use language in a more sophisticated way, but it's done in black and white terms, and this is very important as we move forward in this concept. So I'm going to be brief about the other 4 layers to complete the 7, because the most important layers are the first 3, our physicality, our neurology, giving us the framework to think. Our second layer, up to around age 7, our concept of morality is in there, with our beliefs and our values and how we can make sense psychologically. And then the third layer, how we put it into words. So you can see there are already all these layers underneath that allow the way we think to play out in specific ways. And layer 3 is, learning our ABCs. It's learning how to put them into sentences and punctuation and all the sophistication and distinction that goes with learning how to put our experience of reality together. Now, wrapping this up into layer 4, middle adolescence, age 12 through, let's call it somewhere between 18, 25. It really depends on how we develop these days. We don't have enough social relation to develop in the way that we did when we had, hunter-gatherer societies or tight-knit communities. We're more isolated. So the stat goes, according to Dr. Bruce Perry, most 18-year-olds these days have the emotional development of a 6-year-old. And that's not bad or good, but it does warrant some concern and compassion to help them grow when they look like adults, it's really hard to hold compassion for someone who's acting emotionally like a 6-year-old, and they're saying, I'm right, no, I'm right. This displays this third layer, fundamental, simplistic black and white way of thinking that we see all the time. And when you get into that fourth layer that I was just about to talk about there, the fourth layer where we can connect to, okay, so what are our commonalities? What allows us to take these specific layer 3 words, and you could say, arguably, that the third layer is where science lies. Specific, demonstratable, is that how you pronounce that? Demonstrable? Ways of showing an objective way of agreeing upon what our commonalities are, what we can do to collaborate. Layer 5 is what I will call the adult phase, the majority of our adult life, so somewhere between 18 and 25 is the start to around 40, let's say. And this is where we learn to become masterful at whatever it is that we're doing. We learn to master, linguistics, as a degree, a liberal arts degree, or, English, or science, or any sort of art, athletics. These are all ways that we can take, okay, we have all those layers that come before it, and how am I contributing in a specific way individually? Getting brief about layers 6 and 7, this is where holistic thinking comes in after layer 5, which we generally don't see in our society today. Thank you, by the way, my mentor, Chris Largent, who helped me understand these layers, and this is largely based off of what I've learned from him as far as the structure. Layer 6 is where we connect to a bigger understanding of systems thinking. This is the basis of being able to think holistically rather than atomistically, which is basically right, wrong, good, bad, normal, abnormal. You're with me or against me, in my tribe, out of my tribe. There are primal parts of our brain. If this is the cortex, and this is our limbic, memory, emotional brain, and this is our brainstem, our primal brain, spinal cord. These parts are very black and white, layers 1 through 3. To get to layer 4, we start to put our cortex online and act like human beings when we see our commonalities in layer 4, as opposed to animals who cooperate because they can survive that way. We choose to collaborate, and we're something greater than the animal parts of ourselves, although we need that in order to have this work properly. Okay, so getting back to layer 6, holistic thinking, look at all of the layer 5 people who have mastered their skill, and how can they collaborate as individually competent, autonomous, independent, and successful in their own way, but how do they form a whole that's greater than the sum of the parts? The way those dynamics work, that is the essence of holistic thinking. It's the system of all of the development at all the different layers we can break down. And then we can look at layer 7. I didn't even put ages to that, but essentially it's as you grow and develop, and it's arguable what age goes where. But layer 7, let's just open it up more general philosophically. The idea of layer 7 is a space of wisdom. It's not just seeing that we're more than the sum of our parts. Layer 5, mastery. Layer 6, all of them working together in various ways and learning how they do or don't work together. Layer 7 is this sense of, I see all levels, I embody all levels. That is, I'm able to own my own greatness as an individual insofar as I contribute to collaboration, because as Dr. Bruce Perry says, I'm going to reference him again here, the smallest fundamental unit of our humanity is not the individual, it's the group, because we can't neurologically function without relationships. So layer 7 understands this dynamic and respects all the other layers, and can look at a debate, layer 3, or what do we have in common, layer 4, or specific mastery within all of those frameworks together, layer 5, layer 6, all those layers of competence moving up, and individuals collaborating in systems. And then layer 7, how they all fit together. So you can start to see that it's approaching 10 minutes here in this video, so I'm going to wrap it up. The idea of holistic thinking is that we distinguish what layer we're talking about. If we're triggered by someone and we feel off about them, we think we know that they're good or bad, chances are it's layer 1, our neurology saying, danger, danger. We might call somebody manipulative or dangerous or predatory. There might be merit to those judgments, and they're human beings who are surviving just like we are. We just happen to have a survival cue going on. So we need to uphold our boundaries to stay safe. Of course, that's assumed, and within holistic thinking, that's an obvious statement. You don't say, okay, well, let's honor the greater whole at the expense of everyone else. That's not holistic thinking. Holistic thinking is honoring the individual and the whole, and they both complement one another. Because as we know from how we develop, we need one another in order to maximize how we function neurologically. We need one another. We absolutely do. That's not neediness. That's not dependence. That's only one side of the spectrum. If dependence is over here and independence is over here, that's very black and white thinking. Interdependence is that we're better together. We're more than the sum of our parts in collaboration. Individually, we thrive even more because of one another. And this is shown scientifically through attachment science, through developmental behavioral science. As you see, the more connected our relationships are, the healthier people are, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I define spirituality to encompass everyone, and this is a holistic thinking way of looking at it. Spirituality as, okay, so what are my values? Layer 5, right? What's this person's values? They may be different from mine. Doesn't mean they're wrong. Doesn't mean I'm wrong. That would be layer 3 thinking. Layer 6, and ultimately applying in layer 7 of holistic thinking, honors that we're interdependent. That's the reality of our biology on layer 1. It's the foundation. It's the fundamental unit, the group. And we can learn that through relationships, ultimately, to become more enriched as individuals because we're connected with one another. So I'm going to sign off here saying, let's open up a conversation to enrich our lives. All this bickering we see online, when someone cuts us off in traffic, these are the examples I use most if you've heard me speak about this stuff before. That's a survival brain turning on, and we have no idea we're in survival. That's the thing. When we're in survival, we don't know it. And we'll fight to our dying breath to survive while saying we're not doing that. It's just how we work. So we can take a little dose of humility, recognizing perception is a whole other conversation. What we perceive is so limited. The idea that we think we know how things work is ridiculous. So we can use tools to help understand the greater picture by going, hey, this layer 5 person has a piece that I can learn from, and I have something I can contribute. Oh, and this person, hey, I wonder how those ideas can create a polytheoretical approach. That is a systems thinking way of connecting to the greater whole. We are more than the sum of our parts. I haven't done this sign off in a while, but I'll briefly do it here. Ground yourself in the tools that access inspiration. Think of that as our root. Inspiration, what we're connecting to, what's possible. To access the tools that allow us to grow and thrive together. Know, thinking, yourself. That is, how do I operate in the power dynamics? And B, that is our creative capacity to express and be who we are. Be empowered and connect at the heart. So remember to access the greatness of who you are and who we are by grounding in yourself in the tools that access inspiration. Know yourself. and be empowered. Namaste. Have a great day, y'all.